Hey everybody, welcome back to the Look It All podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. I don't know why I trailed off right there. Ignore that. So, anyways, what are we discussing today? I actually have a couple things on the docket. So, first things first, the pollen is kicking my ass. You can probably hear it in my voice. I've kind of tried to put off podcasting for like 2 weeks, mostly to see if I could get my voice back 100%. But the pollen in North Carolina is nearly at deadly levels. You can hear it. It's gonna be probably a quicker one, not quite as long review on this one. But today, I believe we should cover the brand new Chris Rock special, Selective Outrage. It was taking them takes took me a minute to find it. Um, Wikipedia doesn't have a page on it, so I'm gonna have to do basically all of it off the top of my head. But Selective Outrage, people have been wondering when Chris Rock was going to come out and talk about it, when he was going to come out and talk about the slap. Everyone's had their 2 cents on it. We discussed it almost immediately as it happened. I watched it live with Devil Toasted. It was kind of surreal to see it happen. And on the back end of it, it felt like there was waves. It was like everyone gave their 2 cents. Everyone was like, what is Chris Rock going to do? Is he going to press charges? Which he didn't. He could have made things a lot more worse than what happened to Will Smith. Will Smith ended up getting banned from the Oscars. I think it was like a 10-year ban. I can't remember exactly. But anyways, this is more about the Chris Rock side of it. So it has been a year since Chris Rock really has come out and done anything public besides his smaller stand-up specials, which he has been touring around the United States, but he hasn't really gone publicly and said something. He probably did it the smartest way possible. He had a lot to say about it, and Selective Outrage gave him the outlet to do it. Now, the thing that was kind of interesting about this specific stand up special on Netflix is I believe this was the first one that was streamed live. Now, Netflix has been suffering from the stock market just tumbling since post COVID for it. So they've been trying to get different ways to get people more engaged with Netflix. One of them being making the tiers more affordable and offering an ad tier selection. The other ones uh, include probably are going to be these live broadcast specials. So this was the first one, first ever live streamed event. And I think for the most part, it went pretty well from the technical standpoint. I will say, some people have pointed out that Chris Rock messed up a joke or something like that. I just think that just kind of feels like it goes along for par for the course of this is almost streamlined consciousness just coming off of his head. Like he is not just getting a joke off his chest. He is speaking his mind, and there's a lot of emotion behind his special. So I'll kind of break down the special in like little segments of how it was essentially covered. It may not be exactly, this segment happened here, this segment happened here. It might not be in specific order, but I can tell you what everyone's going to be discussing is the Will Smith last 15-minute monologue that Chris Rock has on Will Smith and Jada. He absolutely does go off. So I'll talk about that first. I was actually going to try streaming this, but my sinuses are just ripping me right now. So we are going to do this in a condensed fashion. The Will Smith Jada monologue that Chris Rock goes off on at the very end of his stand-up special, basically my 2 cents on that segment alone. It's kind of warranted. a lot of people have the same similar feelings that Rock has in this very ending, from Will Smith's apologies feeling very insincere, to the takes of Will Smith is literally like 6'3" or something like that, and Chris Rock is, I don't know, 5'10" at most, but there's just a massive size difference in the two. And a lot of people pointed out how Will Smith probably wouldn't have done that to, I don't know, Rick Ross the boss, or Denzel or Samuel L. Jackson. Like, he specifically went out of his way to, you know, to beat up a little, a smaller person than him. And so that's just something that it's kind of, it's a little bit bully like behavior. Now, I want to be fair with on both sides. I have talked about this in previous podcasts of in the aftercast, discussing the Oscars and the slap and everything else, that Chris Rock and Will Smith were formative comedians slash actors slash just performers that I grew up not quite idolizing but really admiring so much of their work, from the animations, voices that they gave, from like Madagascar to Shark Tale to you know uh, anything else in between, and from their earlier careers with the Fresh Prince or Everybody Hates Chris. Everybody Hates Chris is a little bit more, uh, wasn't quite a show I followed as much, but I really enjoyed the late 2000s, mid 2000s Chris Rock work. The one that is formative in my mind, I know it's not his most notable one. I know everyone talks about him as Pookie, I believe, but I remember him the most from being the caretaker on The Longest Yard. And there's something that happens in that, and I was like, oh, my heart. I was like, dang, they had to do that. So Chris Rock, Will Smith, they are two people that I would have never seen that would have to kind of go down this path. And so to kind of see all of this unfold live on a Netflix special streamed worldwide. I didn't watch it live, so I watched it the night after, but it still felt like it hit just as hard. I was um I was like, "Whoa, this is real time, real life shit going on." Chris Rock he's going off. He he dresses Jada down. He dresses uh, Will Smith down, talking about their marriage. He just goes off left and right. I'm not going to go through the jokes and everything. You can watch the thing for the jokes. The jokes are, I think, for the majority of the Will Smith last 15 minutes, I think there's a setup of a joke, and then there's a punch at the end. Not It's not just a punch line; it's a straight up punch, a verbal punch, and I think it is warranted, honestly, because his Chris Rock's ego was hurt when that happened, and I would say almost even worse for Will Smith. Like, Will Smith is on, honestly, he damaged his own career with that. But I'm also of the opinion that that wasn't, obviously there's, you can't really take that back, but I think there needs to be a level of forgiveness in a way that, yes, he hit Chris Rock, but does that mean that we need to be mad at Will Smith forever? It's not the worst thing anyone has ever done, but it just, and it is disappointing. But I want to leave a little bit of room open for, individuals that we look up to and have provided so much, to the culture of entertainment. I guess I think it's a lot to just kind of shun them out in a way. And so it's definitely a difficult line to walk. And so I just want to kind of point that out for the the last 15 minutes of the monologue. Now, let's talk about basically everything else. So the Chris Rock Will Smith monologue, I think it's warranted. I think it was entertaining. It was it walked the line of being emotional, but I think still pretty tasteful as well. He might have messed up a joke, but the dude is got so much emotion coming off of him. It's just like you can feel it radiating. He's also talking about how successful he's been, and I'm going to transition into the other aspects of the special. So now we're talking about the non Will Smith parts. I'd say the majority of the special is pretty pretty entertaining and interesting. I haven't watched too many of Chris Rock's specials off the top of my head. Mostly, I'm familiar with him as an actor from even going as far as Fargo more recently when he's trying to do his serious chops. But I loved him as much far back as Jackie Brown, and like I said earlier, all of his animated movies of you get the Madagascar, the he worked some with Adam Sandler, I believe, and he's made that documentary Good Hair. My mom was a big fan of that. I haven't watched it yet, but she said it was very interesting. Um, so he's very diverse in the types of projects that he's working in. So you do have to be pretty respectful on a way on a level, just so that you're like, wow, this guy's had a hell of a career. And so watching the stand-up special, I was like, maybe we just get some screaming Chris Rock for a little bit, and eventually he starts talking about Will Smith. I think this was a pretty heartfelt, uh, not too emotionally driven set. uh, Corey of Double Toasted said that a lot of the jokes he had heard before in his previous tour. So Corey saw my buddy Corey saw Chris Rock live. I believe it was back in like November or something like that. So Chris Rock has been using and has been uh, honing and probably crafting his jokes over the course of the year. Probably ever since he got slapped, he's probably doing crafting all these jokes, and a lot of the jokes are pretty damn funny. When even back when he's talking about like being slapped by Will Smith, asking if it hurt, and he says, "Hell yeah, it hurt. He still got summertime ringing in his ears," and the shit like that just had me fucking like laughing out my fucking ass. I was just like, this is it's so fucking true, and it's funny as hell. And so I felt like that for the majority of the sets, whether he was talking about his family. I understood that he wanted to be very proud of his daughters, and his daughters apparently are, very sophisticated young women, very traveled, very pampered, very spoiled, as he says, as a lot of children are. I was spoiled a lot when I was growing up. Their spoils are obviously a lot more different than the majority of people's spoils, considering I looked at the price tag that I believe that Netflix paid for two different shows for Chris Rock to have on their platform. $40 million. Chris Rock was paid $40 million for two shows. I think I saw that on the MSN. So yeah, he's bagging in the money, and I thought the good things I liked about this special were how much he talked about his personal life, and how, not just kind of relatable, but it seemed like he was kind of stepping into another chapter of his life. He was very open with how his marriage happened to not work out, but he says that his wife is the smartest woman, and she's mostly because she's not funny and has half of his shit. So obviously uh, there is some tough love being dealt out in this Selective Outrage segment, and Selective Outrage being the title of the show, and what he's kind of categorizing Will Smith as having. And so there's also another, not, I don't want to say there's an attack on woke culture, which woke is almost such a triggering word for almost almost anybody of the aisle. It's like left hates it, the right hates it. Well, people just kind of hate the ideology for some reason, mostly because I think it's an easy way to say it's a little bit more progressive and liberal, I guess, is like open, diverse, inclusive, non-hating of all, of all people. I thought that Chris Rock did a pretty good job of walking the line of being able to talk about politics, but also being able to point a finger at politics and say, there's some things I agree with, there's some things I don't agree with, and there's problems on both sides. And, there's kind of different aspects to look at it like. And so I haven't watched too much comedy stand-ups in the past like 2 years, but I've heard, everyone is attacking the quote unquote woke culture because everyone's worried that, you're gonna quote unquote offend somebody, which I think is the ultra, you know, ultra sensitive way to kind of read that take. But I can see why it's an easy target to kind of point at woke culture in a whole. But I think the whole conversation of woke culture is is going to date these years very heavily as, oh my gosh, can you believe how much we were talking about it or not talking about it or doing this or doing that kind of thing. I think that comedy about it is kind of hit or miss. And for the rest of the segments of the Chris Rock special, I believe I laughed a lot, but there were some segments I wasn't too crazy about. So let's kind of round this up a little bit. Losing my voice a little bit. The the had some water and it had like soap in it or something. I was like, what in the hell is that taste? Sorry. So I know like the big thing is like about comedy these days, like, oh my goodness, you offended me. Oh my goodness, you said this. Oh my goodness, you're talking about an entire group and generalizing and stereotyping and oh my goodness. Um I think the majority of it's pretty tasteful. It's kind of relatable. They talk about the Kardashians and stuff. He talks about the Kardashians. Um he talks about Chris Rock discusses how like he's canceled more student loans or paid more student loans than Joe Biden has. I thought that was fucking hilarious. So there's tons of interesting topics. I think ones that both toe the line of being, left and right, both parties. I think can enjoy it. He's not like super. He's not stepping on the necks of another group just to make kind of a joke. Now, the only thing I would say about the entire set that felt a little bit, I don't know about insensitive, but just it feels like the conversation of someone that has not had to deal with this. And I honestly have no idea if he's had to deal with this. Now, there's jokes about like not quite abortions, but kind of dealing with, you know, uh, death and not it's not abortions, but like I don't even think he mentions miscarriages or anything like that. But it's just that kind of conversation is very tender for a lot of people to kind of talk about and to kind of expect everyone to kind of laugh at jokes at the expense of discussing about that might be a little. I think that's where my quote unquote woke liberal flag would come up and say, now maybe we shouldn't talk about this now, Chris Rock. But otherwise, I think the set is pretty good. Now, my only reason would be like it would be different if a woman was talking about it from a perspective of having gone through that. Now, none of what he had said that had mentioned that he had gone through that, and that's not really any of my business. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to bring that kind of heavy topic up and expect people to laugh about it, then I, I think you should expect a little bit of pushback. But it's not like I'm mad about it. I was like that. These jokes just didn't work for me, and with saying that, I did see a large subsection of people of all ethnicities that said some loved it, some hate, some didn't like it. Some people come out of the woodwork and like, I never liked Chris Rock, and it's like nobody asked you. Like, I don't understand like the people that are coming out of the woodwork to just say that. It's like we're asking how you like the special, not like if you like a person, and uh, regardless if you like them or something. It's very interesting to look at this, like the tweets and stuff like that. Uh, most people I think found it pretty funny, but I did see some of the retaliation, not retaliation, but just kind of slight rebuttal from the public. Let me see if there's a couple of tweets I can bring up to kind of give an overview of what people were thinking during the Chris Rock um, special. So again, go to LuckyDogPodcast.com for all of the social media links. We are on Twitter, Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. We're on all the fucking things. We're on all these motherfuckers. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. It's taking a little bit longer than we expected, but once we get there, we can start monetizing our videos and start making money. So the Chris Rock Live special. Let me see. Someone said, EAF Tweets at EAF Tweets says, I'm with Chris Rock. Let's see what else we got. The world needed for someone to call her out, burn. And that is about Rock calling out the Duchess of Sue, I believe, over the racial claims she's leveled against the royal family. I got to say, that was a pretty funny segment. She said, him talking about how Meghan Markle had married into one of the most racist families in the world, and they were the original colonists and stuff like that. That shit had me. Oh my goodness, it's pretty damn funny. Some people were laughing at Chris Rock's comedy show, offending everyone, at Brian Simmons. Thanks for being bold at Netflix on Chris Rock Live. That's how it's done. At I Draw and Write. So someone said Chris Rock deserves to be slapped by Will Smith, says reporter. Oh, that's an article. Who else is starting to think Jada Smith probably instigated the Tupac Biggie beef? This lady just doesn't quit. I gotta say that I would have paid probably about $20 just to see Will Smith and Jada's face during this selective outrage. Because I guarantee you this shit was crazy. There was, for every compliment I felt like Chris Rock said, because he did stick up for him. I gotta say that he stuck up for him for saying, in a way, that he admired him. He didn't really have ill will against him before all this, and now post this, it's just like, fuck him, And I don't disagree with what Chris Rock said for the majority of the Will Smith set. I gotta say, he didn't learn to keep Jada's name out his effing mouth. I gotta say, the more I think about it, that him yelling that at the end of the slap, I feel like is almost just as bad as the slap itself, because I felt like the slap, if you go back and rewatch it a few times, most people could have been like, was that planned? Was that not planned? But them yelling at the end with Will off mic, it was just like, oh my goodness, So that's just how the cookie crumbles. Um, but anyways, this is the review for Chris Rock's Selective Outrage. Let me know what you thought about Chris Rock's Selective Outrage, the first live streamed ever event on Netflix. It I think it did pretty well, despite him messing up a joke. Like I don't give a fuck about that. Like dude's in front of bajillion people, dude getting paid out the ass. Like Chris Rock, I don't think he'll give a shit. Um, so, anyways, would I recommend it? I would recommend it. I think even if you're not paying 100% attention to the Selective Outrage, stand-up special, I think it's entertaining to watch or just listen to as you're, doing whatever. So, let me know what you thought about the review. Let me know what you thought about the Selective Outrage special. Be sure to check out more Look At All podcast reviews. Hopefully, I'll have my voice back in a couple days and we'll be able to get a couple more podcasts reviewed for you. I am going to do side by side Magic Mike comparison. Like which Magic Mike is the best? It's been a minute since we discussed it, so be sure to check out lookitoutpodcast.com for all the links. And links for all of the social medias are in the description. You know what to do. 5 stars. Help us get to 1,000 followers on YouTube. If you want to donate, please help us. Keep the lights on and patreon.com/LuckyDog also on paypal.com/LuckyDog. All the links in the description. You know what to do. Take it easy. What does Chris Rock say at the end of this shit? I don't know. Some sort of witty comeback. And here's a witty comeback for you. Peace.